Okay, today I'm going to share with you some knowledge I have on astrology and spirituality. And it's been a very useful tool to me, evolutionary astrology. It was founder by Jeff Wolfe Green, and it very much runs on the basis of Pluto being the main player, and then the nodes, which are the North Node and the South Node. But what I'll explain is that to me, personally, astrology and spirituality, there's no separation. When we go back in history and thousands of years, man would have given meaning to the stars. There would have been a lot of time spent out underneath the stars, and that would have meant that they would have been figuring out what cycles meant and how it applied to them individually. So we can often overlook astrology and the meanings and the archetypes and how we would have described our world in the past. And if we believe in past lives, which I do, it would mean that we've been there, we've experienced that, and we would have had a close connection with understanding the cycles of life and the stars and trying to figure out what they meant to us. Also, when we're born and the planets fall into the exact time we're born, the planets will fall into a place on an astrology chart. And because there are 12 houses on an astrology chart, that would mean that it would be different for each of us. There are 360 degrees on an astrology chart, which I'm going to show you. And it would mean that each of us, each soul, is different. The planets will fall in different houses. There are generational aspects which are similar, but that's another story. And for now, I will keep it simple and explain that the planets, where they fell for you, unless somebody was born at exactly the same time in exactly the same place, you're going to have different aspects and different planets in different houses. Okay, so next slide. So what I found myself when I started studying evolutionary astrology is that it helped me to identify my problems and then look for solutions, because we all have a natural disposition. And in evolutionary astrology, we can see to some degree possibly where the soul has come from and the trajectory the soul wants to work through, and the consciousness and what we're here to do. And again, I'll show you my chart so I can explain more. So next slide is my birth chart. So I was born on the 21st of May 1966. You can see here, let me take my pointer so you can see. So you can see that's my date of birth and my time. Now, without the time, we're not going to be able to see what the rising sign was. And the rising sign on a chart is this point here. It's called the ascendant. And the ascendant changes at regular hours throughout the day. And I have Scorpio rising. So the cloak that I wear, or how I appear in the world to people in my communication, my persona, is very much shown by the rising sign just at 27 degrees Scorpio. That archetype gives me a way of being in this world. And we can see that a sun sign on an astrology chart looks like that. So you can see there, this is the sign of Gemini, and you can see that is a sun sign, and I'm 0 degrees, so I was just a Gemini. If it was a degree before, I would have been a Taurus. So you can see how the time up here, if I was born later, it would have been a different matter. The degrees would have been further in. If I was born earlier, then the degrees would have changed and I would have been a Taurus. So the time of birth is extremely important in astrology. And what we can see is that this is a chart of today at the 17th of February 2019. And we can see the moon for all of us is currently in Leo. Now, depending on the rising sign, let's say you were, for instance, an Aries, and you as a rising sign, then the houses where the moon is, it's going to be different to where it is for me, which is currently in my 8th house. So if you were Aries, it's going to be in a different house. So again, time is of the most importance here. On the 19th, I believe, I should know, but just in case I get it wrong, the 19th, we're going to have a full moon, and the moon takes 28 days to just a bit more to move around a chart. So you can see here that the moon on the 19th is going to fall into my 9th house of Virgo, and it will be at 0 degrees. So 0 degrees is where I'm holding the pointer here. And again, it will be different houses for different people. The 9th house is to do with spirituality, and it's to do with expansion, and it's also to do with truth, searching for truth. The natural ruler of the 9th house is Sagittarius. So hopefully me showing you this gives you an idea of some of the in-depth look, or an in-depth look of what astrology is. It's not the daily newspapers, so stop looking at them. They don't mean much, I can tell you that. It will always be the totality of a chart that we're looking at when we're looking at our lives. And from this chart, I was able to understand myself and know myself. And it's been a very useful tool in identifying issues and also looking at my life path and where I want to go in the world. The other thing I can tell you is that with this full moon, it's going to be in Virgo. It's going to be a healing, very healing for all of us. We've all got things to heal. We've all got wounds, and clearly that's going to affect us. And then whatever it's aspecting, aspects are these things here. If you never looked at a chart, you wouldn't know what I mean by aspects. And aspects is how the planets are talking to each other. So this is my natal chart, natal planets. On the outside here, these are called transits. And these aspects they're basically planets speaking to each other. That's what an aspect means. It is the degrees between one planet and another planet. So a square in astrology, I've got Pluto there squaring my moon, and that means something. There is a definition for that. Then I've also got Pluto, which is here going to my Neptune, and I've got a trine here from Neptune to my Saturn. So reading a chart is complex, and it's taken me a couple of years to learn, but to really get to grips with it and to understand what's going on, it's good to have somebody who knows show us. And I've had some really good teachers along the way, and I still do have, and the books I read. The next slide I'm going to show you is talking about the moon and our emotions. So the moon and our emotions, what we can take into account with cycles is that we can understand that we've got water in our body, and that the planets or the moon will affect our emotions. The moon is also affecting the waters on the earth, and we know that to be true. And we are, we're told we're 70% water. And because the moon moves through the houses quickly, whatever sign it's in, we're going to have a flavor of the emotions that house where the moon is, how it affects us, if this makes sense. Okay. So this full moon is in Virgo. So if you know and you understand your chart, you've got your birth time, you can put in your birth date into a chart calculator and see where the moon is falling. And that full moon will affect the next 2 weeks of our lives. And a new moon affects the entire month. So when we understand where the moon is falling, we can then sort of look at our lives, and we can contemplate our lives, and we can learn about ourselves and look at what we need to work on. The other thing I'm going to bring into consideration here is the archetypes, which I love, and each planet is an archetype. It's a description. So what is an archetype? And an archetype is a typical example of a certain person or thing. And it's a primitive mental image inherited from the earliest human ancestors and supposed to be present in the collective unconscious. So the collective unconscious is how we all feel, or things that we think, and it's below the surface of what we believe to be true, and how we live out our lives and how we interact with each other. And here I'm going to talk to you about synchronicity, which was a word not everybody knows, was coined by Carl Jung. And Carl Jung defined synchronicity as being acausal, connecting togetherness, a principle meaning coincidence, and acausal parallelism. He introduced the concept as early as 1920. And in the dictionary, results for acausal, it means non-governed or operating by the laws of cause and effect. And acausal parallelism, if I'm saying that correctly, meaning synchronicity, describes events that are causally unrelated and yet meaningful, that we would call a meaningful coincidence. So when people looked at the planets and the stars and whatever was going on, or the cycles, they would have been able to relate certain situations or happenings to things that were going on in their lives. And because of that, then it would have gone into the understanding of the archetypes. So I'm going to read here now from Yoganda, and it's beautiful. It's from a book called Autobiography of a Yogi, and this can help you understand astrology and his understanding of it also, which I found rather beautiful. Astrology is the study of man's response to planetary stimuli. The stars have no conscious benevolence or animosity. They merely send forth positive and negative radiations of themselves. They do not help or harm humanity, but offer a lawful channel for the outward operation of cause-effect equilibriums which each man has set into motion in the past. A child is born on that day and at that hour when the celestial rays are in mathematical harmony with his individual karma. And his horoscope is a challenging portrait revealing his unalterable past and its probable future events. But the natal chart can be rightly interpreted only by men of intuitive wisdom, and these are few. The message boldly blazoned across the heavens at the moment of birth is not meant to emphasize fate, the result of past good and evil, but to arouse man's will to escape from his universal thraldom. What he has done, he can undo. None other than himself was the instigator of the cause, and whatever effects are now prevalent in his life, he can overcome any limitation because he created it by his own actions in the first place, and because of his spiritual resources, which are not subject to planetary pressure. And that is Outwitting the Stars, Autobiography of a Yogi. The word thraldom is quite beautiful. I'll explain it. It's a state of subjugation to an owner or master, or bondage, enslavement. And basically it means that, you know, we have free will. This is what's really going on in the world. If we look at the archetypes and we understand what's going on, then we can look at something and say, oh, maybe I can do this a different way. Maybe I can live a different way. Maybe my suffering, you know, whatever reason I suffered or whatever wound I've got, there's a bigger picture and something greater to understand from that. And what is my gift in this world? And my next slide is what I do and why I use astrology as well. Is I facilitate in resolving life's unresolved problems and collaborate with people to the resolution of their problems. And I also assist in looking closely at any anxiety and fears and memories that are also complex PTSD related, which cause people to feel trapped in unwanted situations and cycles of emotional pain. And part of my work involves evolutionary astrology to assist others to understand the evolutionary intent of the soul in this lifetime. And there's my email there if you've got any questions and you possibly want me to look at your chart. I have my Letting Go Techniques page on Facebook, which means you can look at my booking page there. but I'm still learning this process as I go through this myself. But it's a fascinating way to solve some of life's problems and to understand ourselves. I hope this was useful. And that's the end of my slides. And I'll be back with more on astrology and other stuff that I want to share with the world. Thanks for watching.